Donald Trump was having a psychotic meltdown aboard Air Force One as he was flying back from Mar-a-Lago to Washington, D.C. on the taxpayer dime. He was making post after post, each one more deranged than the next. He posted fake Wikipedia photos of himself, saying that he's currently the acting president of Venezuela, because nothing says America first than saying you're the acting president of Venezuela. He's making deranged posts attacking New York Attorney General Letitia James after 2 additional grand juries refused to issue indictments against New York Attorney General Letitia James after the initial case against her on some bogus, trumped up, pun intended, charges about mortgages were dismissed by a federal judge. Now Donald Trump says he wants to go after New York Attorney General Letitia James for something having to do with her hairdresser. Donald Trump posts federal prosecutors launch new probe into New York Attorney General Letitia James involving campaign payments to longtime hairdresser. Donald Trump is going to keep on making bogus investigations against New York Attorney General Letitia James. Then earlier in the day, Donald Trump was posting weird photos of himself looking like he was Bigfoot on top of the White House. And then it just had the word soon. Then Donald Trump also ordered a criminal investigation into Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, who Donald Trump appointed during his first term, who Donald Trump has threatened to criminally investigate over and over again. Donald Trump has threatened to fire Jerome Powell. And now Donald Trump has launched a criminal investigation. He's ordered the DOJ in Washington, D.C., Jeanine Pirro, the old Fox host who went by Judge Jeanine on Fox, who's now the United States Attorney for Washington, D.C., has launched a criminal investigation into Jerome Powell. Jerome Powell late last night issued a video response saying that the threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public rather than following the preference of the president. And then even Republican Senator from North Carolina, Tom Tillis, responded to Donald Trump launching this criminal investigation into Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, by putting a message that says that Tillis, who's on the Senate Banking Committee, which would be responsible for the future appointment of the next chairman of the Federal Reserve, many believe it's going to be Kevin Hassett, Donald Trump's national economic advisor, who would be a total disaster. But Tillis, a Republican from North Carolina, says that he will put a permanent hold on anybody Donald Trump picks to replace Jerome Powell while this phony criminal investigation into Jerome Powell is taking place. Tom Tillis writes the following: if there were any remaining doubt whether advisors within the Trump administration are actively pushing to end the independence of the Federal Reserve, there should now be none. It is now the independence and credibility of the Department of Justice that are in question. I will oppose the confirmation of any nominee for the Fed, including the upcoming Fed chair vacancy, until this legal matter is fully resolved. Now, senators have the ability to put a hold on a nominee and essentially block that nominee. It should also be noted that Tom Tillis is not seeking re-election in the 2026 Senate race. He previously did not support part of Donald Trump's agenda. Then Donald Trump threatened him, and Tom Tillis is like, there's really no need for me to even be in this position anymore, because being a Republican requires that you be in a cult. And Tillis says, I'm not going to do that. Now, as part of Donald Trump's psychotic meltdown aboard Air Force One, he made numerous statements that were dangerous, deranged, demented, and outright sick. For example, on Renee Good, who was murdered by Trump's ICE Gestapo, Donald Trump said, you know why they had to kill her, Trump says, is because at a minimum, she was very disrespectful to the ICE officer. And so if you're very disrespectful to an ICE officer who are there to terrorize the communities, if you're disrespectful, they will kill you. is what Donald Trump says. Listen to what Donald Trump says. I'm not being hyperbolic. Listen to what Trump says in his own words. Play this clip.
At a very minimum, that woman was very, very disrespectful to law enforcement. And you heard the same noises. You saw the same crunch that I saw. You can't do that with law enforcement, whether it's police or ICE or Border Patrol or anybody else.
When it comes to ICE officials,
Then aboard Air Force One, as Donald Trump has this psychotic meltdown, Donald Trump says that as it relates to Greenland, we're not talking about leasing. We will acquire it. One way or another, America will take it over. Here, play this clip.
That's a war that should have never happened with Ukraine.
The UK and Germany are discussing plans for a joint NATO mission to protect Arctic security in Greenland. Does that change your calculus at all?
No, look, we're talking about acquiring, not leasing, not having it short term. We're talking about acquiring. And if we don't do it, Russia or China will, and that's not going to happen when I'm president.
Are you going to increase the amount of military bases on Greenland in the meantime?
Well, we have bases on Greenland. Yeah.
Are you going to do more?
I put a lot of soldiers there right now if I want, but you need more than that. You need ownership. You really need title, as they say in the real estate business.
Now, you probably have heard from, we've done some video on it before, but I'll just remind you of it, that the French Army General Nicolas Richoux has cautioned America that by declaring Greenland as being part of the United States, it's a red line. If the U.S. invades, they stop being systemic adversaries. They become enemies. If the U.S. attacks Greenland, we must fight the Americans. So to be very clear, France views the United States right now not as an ally, but as a systemic adversary. And the French general says you will go from systemic adversary to outright enemy, and we will fight you if you keep this rhetoric up about Greenland. Going back to Donald Trump's psychotic meltdown aboard Air Force One, on the Affordable Care Act tax subsidy extension, as you now know, the House of Representatives voted to extend the Affordable Care Act tax subsidies. MAGA Mike Johnson tried to block it. Democrats, through its leader, Hakeem Jeffries, put forward a discharge petition that got a vote on the floor to extend the ACA tax credits, and 17 Republicans joined the Democrats. Now it goes to the Senate. Will the Senate feel the pressure to pass an extension of the ACA tax credits? And Trump has asked, though, would you veto the Affordable Care Act tax credit subsidies extension one way or another? And Trump says, yeah, I'd probably veto it. Here, play this clip.
Mr. President, the House passed a 3-year extension of the ACA. It's in the Senate. If it passed the Senate, would you veto it or allow it to?
I might, yeah.
Then Donald Trump bashes NATO aboard Air Force One. Play this clip.
2%, and they didn't pay. Now they're paying 5%. I'm the one that saved NATO. You wouldn't have NATO if I weren't president.
Would you pull the U.S. out of NATO? Would you consider doing that?
Well, maybe NATO would be upset if I did it. Maybe NATO would save a lot of money. But I like NATO. I just wonder whether or not if we needed NATO, would they be there for us? I'm not sure they would. We spend a lot of money on NATO. And I'm not sure they would.
But what would you?
And then Donald Trump gets super creepy with Caroline Leavitt, who's standing behind him. And Donald Trump says, you set me up. I'm on this plane and I can't grab anything. I'm not going to grab Caroline. Should I grab Caroline? Here, play this clip right here.
When will you meet with Machado this week?
Looking for something to grab here because it's going to get rough. And I don't seem to be in I think you did this to me. You put me in a position where there's absolutely nothing to grab.
Mr. President,
So I'm looking for something to grab, and it's not going to be Caroline.
have any oil companies made commitments to you, sir? Have any oil companies made commitments to the United States after your?
Then Donald Trump is asked what he and his regime mean when they say that ICE officers have absolute immunity and Border Patrol has absolute immunity. Let me be very clear. I litigated cases like this. They don't have absolute immunity. They can be criminally prosecuted for engaging in murder. They don't have absolute immunity. They have qualified immunity in a civil case, but as the term is qualified. It is a limited form of immunity that if they behave as a reasonable officer would in that circumstance, there may be a limited, but it's not an absolute immunity. There's no criminal immunity. Let me be clear. But here's what Donald Trump says about his view of absolute immunity. Play this clip.
You really need title, as they say in the real estate business.
Around Minneapolis, your administration has advocated for absolute immunity for the ICE officer who shot Renee Good. How do you define absolute immunity? What does that mean?
Everyone's seen it. And a woman who's very violent. She's a very radical person. Very sad what happened. Her friend was very radical. Go or drive.
For absolute immunity, how would you define that?
Well, I'm going to let the people define it. But immunity, you know what immunity means as well as I do.
So that officer should be back on the force?
People can't be treating law enforcement that way, whether it's ICE or Border Patrol or our police and men and women. You can't do that.
As we head into this week, I think it's worth noting, as well as the Wall Street Journal did this weekend, America's job market has entered the slow lane. This is what Wall Street Journal writes. Hiring sputtered, the unemployment rate rose. 2025 put a decisive end to the hottest job market in a generation. That's from the Wall Street Journal saying that right there. I want to point this out as well, that Senator Tillis, who I mentioned before from North Carolina, he also wrote the following last week. I'd simply like the Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, to respond to what are now 2 requests by the chairman to come before our committee, and that's the reason why I placed the blanket hold before the shooting yesterday on anything related to Homeland Security until such time as she does that. In other words, Tom Tillis is putting a hold on funding, on appointments to the Department of Homeland Security until, and good for him for doing this, until she testifies before the Senate, until she testifies before Congress. She's refusing to testify. And when she came before the House, remember, she left super early and she lied and said she had to go to a FEMA hearing that she never actually showed up for. She lies about absolutely everything. Oh, earlier in the day, Donald Trump posted the photo of the Mar-a-Lago Golden Entrance. I mean, this guy is so tone deaf, so out of touch. But think about what he was saying there. In Air Force One. It's absolutely heinous stuff. Let me just point out one more quote from Tom Tillis, who was recently on CNN. And here's what he said about NATO's Article 5 commitments and how our NATO allies, the only time Article 5 has ever been invoked, America invoked it after 9/11, and NATO had our back. Denmark had more deaths per capita in Afghanistan than any country outside of the U.S. Here's what he says. Play this clip.
It's very important for the NATO alliance to know that we have their back because they've had ours. We're the only country that has benefited from the Article 5 commitment in Afghanistan, where treasure and lives have been lost by our allies. We owe them respect, and we need to make it very clear that our strength and our ability to project power, to stand off against Putin, to stand off Russia, stand off China, Iran, it all rests on this exquisite capability that we have under NATO.
And here's what Tillis said about releasing the Epstein files. Let's play it.
Do you think it would make sense for the administration to release this video?
I'm okay with it being released, and I'm okay with whatever.
We got to release the video. Look, we got to get the Epstein files released. We got to get any videos that do not in any way compromise mission integrity down there. Just get the stuff out there.
Would you rather see a different Secretary of Defense?
I just want to see the facts so I can make an informed decision.
There you have it, folks. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe. Help us get to 6 million subscribers. We appreciate you so much, and have a good one.
New Meidas merch. Head to store.MeidasTouch.com today and get yourself the best pro-democracy gear and show your support. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.